Hi, I'm Rexx Deane. I'm a sci-fi author. I've currently got two books out. The first one is Synthesis Weave, and the second one is Synthesis Weave 2 Afterglow, which was released last year. My novels tend to be science fiction. They straddle the boundary between science and fantasy quite a lot. Synthesis Weave series is about a security programmer who is tasked with an investigation into an explosion aboard the space station where he works. He brings in his colleague Rexx, who is a disabled ex-marine, who's a double amputee. They work together on a project for him to regain his mobility by developing a special prosthetic backpack. Due to complications, he can't have cloned limbs or traditional prosthetics. And I'd like to read to you a small passage, which is one of Rexx's encounters when he's stranded on an alien planet. Rexx woke feeling like he'd got extra parts on his body, added solely for the purposes of aching. The early morning air was cool but comfortable. The edges of the lake, basking in the thin morning light, seemed indistinct, merging with the forest. A wispy mist breathed across it from the drying leafy ground. Willows droned their sorrows at the water's edge. The soft tresses of Spanish moss hung between the acid gold cascades of laburnum, caressing the water. As he lay staring out from the alcove, he couldn't think of a more idyllic planet on which to die. He drained the last few drops from his water bottle into his parched mouth, which felt like it had been open all night. He balked. What might have crawled in while he slept? Hefting the Moby pack onto his lap, he shuffled to the edge of the slab of rock, put on the pack and activated it. 4 tiny spheres appeared above him, and several button presses later the fields vanished and coalesced into the familiar semi-transparent prosthetics, and he stood. "Good morning, Rexx," the cube said, startling him. "Don't do that." "Do not do what? Greet you?" "Greet me by all means, but don't make me jump." "Next time, I will warn you first. Perhaps I will suddenly say I am about to speak, and then greet you." "You're totally insane. I'm off to get some water." Rexx made his way down to the lake, shaking his head. "Trust me to be stuck with a sarcastic AI. SI. SI with big ears." The prosthetic legs sank into the mud, squelching with every step as he drew closer to the water. He bent down to fill the bottle, but started to tip forwards. With the ankles fixed, he couldn't reach the water without falling in. He scratched his chin. Sitting on his backside in the water seemed like a bad idea, so he stepped forwards until the water came to the top of the prosthetics. It was strange to see right down to the mud at the bottom through leg-shaped holes in the water. He reached out to fill the container and stared out across the still lake. Under different circumstances, the surroundings would have been perfect. As the clear water bubbled into the bottle, he licked his lips in anticipation. Something splashed. He froze. Glug, gluggle, blup, in the bottle. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled, and he slowly scanned the water's surface for the source of the disruption. There was no movement except for a large, thin ripple spreading sedately across the lake from the middle where something had momentarily broken the surface. He breathed out slowly. It must have been a fish or something. He had to calm down and stop being so jumpy. The bottle gave a final glug and he screwed on the top. The lake erupted. Birds panicked in the trees and took flight. A shadow fell across the water from around him as the torrent rained down. A gaping maw filled with rows of savage needle-sharp teeth reared out of the water, blotting the sun. He straightened, fighting every muscle in his body. The mouth came down. He staggered back, and it snapped shut inches from his face, revealing the leathery brown head to which it belonged. From the top of the head dangled a long appendage with a bark-like texture, and either side of the mouth 2 large onyx eyes glistened with black malevolence. The creature slithered forward on a long serpentine body, and the odour of rotting flesh belched forth as the thick rubbery lips of the enormous mouth parted. Rexx stepped back again and fell onto the leafy mud. The angular serpent reared up, mouth dripping with stringy putrid saliva, and lunged at him. Teeth gnashed inches from his face. He kicked at the ground, digging in his heels to propel himself forwards, but succeeded only in pushing more mud into the lake. There was no choice but to crawl for it. He rolled over. The razor-lined mouth came down once more and snapped shut. With a mighty crunch of breaking teeth, it trapped the left leg of the prosthetic field in its jaws and rose up, lifting Rexx off the ground. Rexx dangled from the harness and flailed helplessly as it shook its head from side to side, trying to tear its precious meal to pieces. The pack emitted a loud blarp. A second later, the field lost cohesion. The crushing pressure was too much for the capacitor, and the laser-like threads constrained within the field exploded from the surface in a chaotic lysergy of light, whipping about as they faded to nothing. In the leg's absence, the toothy grin snapped shut. "Shit!" Rexx fell to the ground, landing painfully on the pack, and the creature recoiled and rose for a second bite. So that's a snippet from Synthesis Weave. You can check it out on my Gumroad page, where it's available for pay what you want pricing. So if you don't want to pay for it, you can get it for free. I'm currently reading the first book of the Embers of War series by Gareth Powell. I only just started reading it, so I haven't got very far, but it looks like it's going to be quite enjoyable. I've also recently finished reading my first Terry Pratchett book, which is The Colour of Magic. People have been saying to me for ages that I need to get into Terry Pratchett because I play fantasy role-playing games, but I've just never really found the time. But I'm glad I started reading it. The style is a little bit difficult to get used to. However, the humour in it is really hilarious, and I think some of it started to rub off in my third book that I've got in progress. So my best wishes go out to everybody during this difficult time, and hope you all have a good day.